Hey photographers, this is the Panasonic G9 II. It was released in September 2023 and my friend Paul has been waiting very patiently for this review, but as Panasonic has not provided me a review model, Paul lent me his. So, not sponsored. Paul didn't review the script or the video before posting. He did not ask me to mention his YouTube channel, but you'll find the link below. And the Mark II is a very interesting camera. I really should stop commenting on camera naming completely, but although weight and size are the same, the Mark II looks more like the S5 full-frame body than the original G9. The G9 had a top-side status screen, the mode dial had a locking button, and the customizable front-side lever has been retired. But thanks to a new 4/3 sensor, resolution bumps to 25 megapixels. And the new processor delivers improvements in autofocus, burst speed, and video capability. The original G9 was promoted as a stills camera, even though the video spec was only marginally less than other Panasonic models at the time. And the tagline here, "Capture the decisive moment," still feels stills focused. Sorry. The big new deal here is phase detect autofocus. It's welcome and it works well. Let me show you. From infinity to Opia at the lens's closest focus distance, then back to Marta at the other edge of the frame 60 centimeters back, and back to Opia. Fast, confident, accurate. Panasonic goes from being a focus laggard to join the leaders. If you are considering an upgrade, this is the reason to do it. Now the camera is light and the utilitarian design feels solid and well made. It's 658 grams, that's body with battery and card. With the 12 to 60 millimeter lens, just under a kilo. That's enough weight to feel substantial, but light enough to carry around easily with a wrist strap, as I did walking around Valencia and cycling along the Costa Brava. The generous front grip and thumb wrist on the back fit my hand nicely, and then, because everything is slightly left of center, it's well balanced. Lens, viewfinder, LCD, and tripod mount all line up. Now, the battery door on the bottom has a slide to open and close. Why can't it just snap closed? The card door slides open to reveal 2 card slots. Why doesn't it snap closed? The 1840 K-dot LCD swivels out, then up all the way to face front and down, and closes to protect when needed. The OLED viewfinder protrudes nicely behind to reduce nose smudges on the screen, 3680 K-dots, diopter -4 to +2, enabling me to shoot without my glasses. There's no in-body flash, but there is a hot shoe. And the Mark II has lots of buttons and dials, almost too many, but they are useful. Now, on-off is tucked into the awkward position on the mode dial. That means 2 fingers to get started. So much nicer when you can turn the camera on with the same finger you use to release the shutter. The shutter release can stop and start video, but the big red metallic button does the same thing when you're not in a video mode. The non-locking mode dial has auto and 4 exposure modes, 3 custom settings, and 2 video modes. Then the underpopulated dial on the left side selects drive modes, 2 burst options, high resolution, time-lapse, and self-timer. Video options should be here. That would eliminate confusion with the exposure modes. Now, a dial surrounds the shutter, another on the back edge of the right side. They generally control aperture and shutter duration, but also have other functions. The white balance key opens the white balance selection panel. The ISO key opens the ISO selection panel. And the EV key opens the exposure compensation panel. Focus mode, beside the viewfinder, single, continuous, and manual, it surrounds the focus area key, which opens the area selection panel. Now, each of these selections can be combined with face eye detection. The joystick positions the focus area. Nice feature here. Pressing the joystick toggles from the current position to center and back. AF-on focuses and works in manual focus mode. Always appreciated. Menu key and direction keypad also includes a selection dial. And the viewfinder's eye sensor switches between LCD and viewfinder, and then the LVF key overrides the selection. Now there are 2 unlabeled function keys on the front. A total of 15 keys can be customized. Camera selectable aspects are 4x3, 3x2, 16x9, and square. The large 4x3 is 25 megapixels, medium at 12, small 6. JPEG settings are standard and fine. RAW can be combined with either. HEF is not available. Mark II has a mechanical shutter that maxes to 1/8000. When combined with electronic front, only 1/2000. Full electronic shutter ups to 1/32,000. And for those 2 SD card slot, SDXC UHS-2 V90 is supported, and there are options to set which type of files are stored on each. I'll be using the full mechanical shutter and selected 4x3 large with fine and raw. I'm using allocation record with JPEG and RAW on 1, video on 2. The exposure meter has 4 settings, no text for these icons, representing multi, center, spot, and highlight. For manual exposure, the variance from 0 is a numerical display at the bottom of the screen. On the custom menu, monitor options can activate the histogram, which can be positioned on screen using the cursor keys or with touch. Put your finger on it and move it. Or scroll down to turn on blinking highlights. ISO sets from 100 to 25,600 in 1-stop increments. Go to the menu for 1/3 stop increments. Auto ISO's lower and upper limits can be set in the menu. Auto defaults 3200. Video auto ISO settings are independent. In video, ISO maxes to 12,800. Aperture is lens dependent. In manual mode, the front dial is the default aperture control, back dial, shutter duration. For shutter and aperture priority, either dial sets. In program, soft press the shutter to display the auto settings, then turn either dial for program shift options. Press the exposure compensation key and adjust from the 10-stop range. Focus options include tracking, zone, and area with a sizable and movable frame. Face and object detect engages easily and identifies March's body and face. This video was recorded using firmware 2.1, released in January 2024. Panasonic's menu system is one of my favorites. I like the menu key in the middle of the D-pad. I like the font and the quality of the letters. Pressing DISP adds more helpful text, but it is a little terse. I like the nested tabs, although the purpose of color coding the highest level eludes me. On the photo menu, each of the 2 image quality screens has a tab, but because the custom menu overflows the design, as some second-level tabs have 2 or even 3 screens, they're displayed top right. Nitpicking, I know, but consistency, please. One aspect that is useful for reviewers is that when I output to HDMI, the menu appears as a quarter screen overlay. That's nice. But that said, not everything appears on the output, even when info display is on. For instance, the manual focus distance display does not. Of course, you can turn the info off for clean output. And that said, I'm not always sure where to look for some things. The custom in-out has HDMI record output settings. Then the setup in-out HDMI connection has a bunch more. Please consolidate. Also, I don't fully understand the distribution of settings between Photo Others, Custom Settings, and Setup. Most camera menus and settings carousel so that when you get to the highest ISO, one more gets you back to the lowest. Not here. I'm kind of used to the other, but think this is likely better. And I'd really appreciate an indication as to why a setting is dimmed out. Sadly, even if there is an error message, no help. Another annoyance are the continuous warnings. Every time you scroll the mode dial past S&Q video, this warning has to be dismissed. There should be an expert mode to turn these off. Now, press the white balance key to start color configuration, the usual auto configurations, and the usual presets. There are 4 configurable presets and 4 K settings. Capturing a preset is simple. Press up and release the shutter. To set a K value, press up and use the slider, 2500 to 10,000 in 100-step increments. Press down to add or remove a color cast from any white balance setting. Color profiles, Panasonic calls them styles, are selected in the menu. 17 to choose from, including some specifically designed for video, like 709, Vlog, and Real-Time LUT. Each style has a selection of adjustable settings. Then, there are 10 slots to create your own profiles. This is a feature that Fujifilm photographers refer to as recipes. Much simpler here. Incidentally, by default, only 4 of the 10 are listed. Setup photo style settings will reveal the rest, but can also be used to hide those you don't use. Nice. This menu also installs up to 10 lookup tables for the real-time setting. I downloaded a few of the free ones from the Lumix online library. Back in photo style, select real-time, then select one from those you've installed. While most think of these as video settings, they also work for photos. For more dramatic effects, select one of the 10 filters. Interesting but cumbersome to access. For each, press the white balance key to adjust the amount of the effect. But if you use this, you can set up touch to select. Use the left side dial to access drive settings, 2 burst or continuous modes, configurable in the menu's other settings. Options for burst 1 include H, 14 frames, M, 9 frames, and L, 2 frames per second. Lots of on-screen real estate to display the numbers here, which I found in the manual. Burst 2 options use the electronic shutter. The Mark II switches automatically when burst 2 is selected. Frame rates up to 75 per second. These are displayed on screen. These are extreme settings beyond what's available elsewhere. But this mode is limited to 200 frames. At the SH60 setting, about 3 seconds. You may wonder why 75 is dimmed out, card space, RAW, image size. It's not available with continuous autofocus, which is somewhat limiting. Why doesn't that switch automatically? Even at 60, Panasonic hedges its bets by calling it estimated focus. So, how well does it work? I set up the Brio track so that the train gets to the lens's closest focus point and then switch to continuous AF. I selected tracking and then moved the acquisition point to where the train will enter the frame. Holding down the AF key, focus stays with the train across the frame, towards the camera, back to the closest focus point. And now with burst. First high, large image size, picture quality fine, no RAW. A lot of blackout and stuttering. The frames that were taken, first, it misses an occasional frame. Then, as it gets close, 5 in a row are too soft to use. Let's move on to super high burst. First 20 frames. These are better. At one point, focus shifts from the hand to the Brio logo, and a few are slightly soft. Out of 140 frames, that's an excellent result. And then 60. Because it's limited to 200 frames, I waited until the train rounded the bend to start. Now, focus is perfect. Conductor is sharp in every image. Just too bad it's limited to 200 frames. And video? Press and release to start tracking. Again, excellent results. My decision, I'll stick with 20 frame burst to get 10 seconds of recording. Exposure, also limited and set with the first frame, but with 60 and continuous AF, exposure is adjusted frame by frame. They can be combined with pre-shot with 3 options, 0.51 and 1.5 taken. These buffer when the shutter is soft pressed and start saving when it's released. Yes, included in the 200 frame limit. The next drive setting is high resolution, suitable when shooting with a tripod and static subjects. Multiple shots are taken and merged at 4x3 XL that can yield a 100 megapixel image. Other limitations: electronic shutter, focus single or manual, minimum aperture f11, max ISO 1600. The next drive setting is time-lapse. Use the menu Others to select time-lapse or stop motion up to 10,000 images, -1. Intervals from 1 second to 100 minutes, -1 second. Potential end time is displayed. Now, after recording, a video can be saved from the stills. Lots of settings are available for the video. And then the final drive setting is self-timer. Again, use the menu to select your options, presets for 2 or 10 seconds with 3 image option, custom sets from 2 to 10 seconds but no multiple image option. Not on the dial, but on the Others menu, brackets, exposure, aperture, focus, and white balance can be selected. This makes it hard to select and deselect. Lots of space on the dial, not sure why it wasn't included there. Exposure bracket can be set from 3 to 7 images, from 1/3 to 1 stop. To see the image you've just taken, press the play key, the rear dial zooms in, press disp to see the settings, or turn on auto review to have each image displayed after you release the shutter. For RAW files, use RAW processing for in-camera adjustment and conversion to JPEG. White balance, photo style, including the downloaded lookup tables, and more can be changed. So let me start the video section by telling you that this scene is recorded internally on the Mark II at 4K 16:9, 30 frames, all intra 10-bit 422. And that selection records as H.264 at 400 megabits. And a few observations about videos. The Mark II has a wide range of exotic features and settings. It's a wonderful tool to explore and experiment with advanced settings, high resolutions, high frame rates, codecs like ProRes, or even RAW. And with those high data rates, trying log recording in HLG can be a great way to learn what those features offer filmmakers. Now, this video is produced in 4K 30 frames and output using the H.265 codec at 10-bit. That informs some of my own settings, and that is far from the maximum the Mark II offers. This sample scene is recorded at the low end, 1080 HD H.264 at 100 megabits. This one, at the high, 5.7K using ProRes HQ at 1.9 gigabits, chances are, without someone telling you what to look for, you won't see much, if any, difference. And there are several challenges here, including YouTube's compression algorithms and the quality and size of your display. Now, granted, there are some who can see the difference, like sommeliers who can identify wines. Some experienced video mavens can identify video characteristics, or at least discern higher from lower quality. Anyway, as a reviewer and techie, lots of interesting features, bringing pro-level capabilities to a consumer device. Lots of fun to play and experiment with these, but for most of us, these settings are too complicated, and unless you're generating significant revenue from those who appreciate the difference, they don't pay off. Also, remember that you can't just upgrade to this camera. You'll need to upgrade everything in your video workflow. High-end, high-capacity SD cards won't cut it. You'll need big and fast SSDs. To color grade and edit videos with these settings, you'll need a high-quality display connected to a high-powered and fast computer setup with terabytes and terabytes of storage. Otherwise, you're just buying frustration. So, video recording starts by pressing the metallic red key, top right, and I suggest that you'll find more control by turning the dial to the Video M mode. As a capable and powerful video camera, the Mark II supports MOV in both H.264 and H.265, as well as ProRes. Resolutions up to 5.7K at 30 frames, 4K 120 H.264 or H.265 are not selectable. Other settings dictate which is used. In general, 420 color subsampling is selected. It's H.265, 422, H.264. And before diving any deeper, let's go back to SD card support for a minute. With V90, you can record up to 800 megabit data rate and ProRes in 1080. You can exceed those, recording ProRes 422HQ up to 5.7K 30 frames with a data rate of 1.9 gigs by using a Panasonic supported SSD, like the SanDisk Extreme Portable. A terabyte can store about 30 minutes. An interesting setting I've not seen elsewhere is pixel to pixel. That crops the image, but means that every pixel is matched one-to-one to the video resolution. So no binning or skipping, just one-to-one. I like that. And note that if you use SDHC cards instead of XC, you'll be limited to 30 minutes. With XC and SSD, the limit's 3 hours. And then the manual warns that at 23 Celsius, recording time is about 30 minutes before overheating. At 40, about 7 minutes. After selecting Movie M on the dial, I set exposure mode to M, I set the shutter speed to 60, opened the aperture, and then set the ISO to properly expose the scene. Unfortunately, the histogram disappears while setting ISO. I won't list all of the possible settings, but here are the ones I chose without really sampling and evaluating them all. System frequency is NTSC. Now I'm using the MOV format for internal recording. I'm using pixel mode. Then from 10 screens with 56 options on screen 6, I selected 4K 30 frames. For YouTube, that's considerably more than needed. And incidentally, the manual takes 10 pages just to list them all. Now, video settings, selecting RAW, using SSD, and the rest are sprinkled all over the menu system in a seemingly random fashion. There are also annoying reminders to remind you a selection might not be a good idea, but I don't need a warning every time I switch between MOV and ProRes. Thanks anyway. There should be some way to suppress that. Now, there is a menu filter capability, so that only selections you'll actually use are displayed. Selecting my preferences, 30 frame and 4K, makes my choice simpler. Or press the Q key to add it to my list. Now, incidentally, in addition to the histogram, the Mark II can display a waveform for video exposure levels or vector scope for color alignment. These do not display on the HDMI output, but can be positioned. Stabilization has several options: normal, all 3 movement axes, or vertical and horizontal only, but those are only available in stills mode. E-stabilization for video has standard and high settings. Each crops in a bit. Also a boost setting, which improves stabilization, but not for panning shots. So here's the effect on a handheld shot, fully zoomed in to 120 millimeters on this lens, off. Normal. E standard. E high. And boost. Now for video, I appreciate the full-sized HDMI port, the 3.5mm mic, and headphone ports, and a USB-C type port that supports power delivery to charge and power the camera while recording. Now, Mark II has the interesting ability to output 12-bit full sensor RAW data over HDMI to a handful of external recorders from Atomos and Blackmagic. That's a resolution of 5760 by 4320 pixels. An even smaller set of devices support all resolutions and frame rates. For instance, the Ninja V I borrowed from my friend Sonam records full sensor RAW only at 24 frames. There are other limitations. No internal recording is possible while outputting RAW. A limited ISO range, photo style sets to Vlog, well, that makes sense, and a bunch of color settings are unavailable. Now, I'm usually downplaying the high dynamic range features in these kinds of consumer cameras. But combined with high bandwidth external recording here, it's a feature that might actually provide the results that you'd expect. There are some Panasonic models included on the list of Netflix-approved cameras. And while this isn't one, the features provided here are very similar and allow you the opportunity to experiment. But one of the issues Paul raised when he lent me the camera was audio, as he felt the Mark II did not meet his expectations. My expectations are lower, and I would never expect a consumer camera to provide the highest quality audio. Now, in this video, as in all my videos, I record audio externally. In-camera audio may be suitable for a little background ambience, but I would not rely on it for more. However, for Paul, this on-camera section is recorded on camera. I connected a broadcast quality Sony ECM44 lapel mic using an XLR to 3.5 adapter. Lots of audio settings. This mic requires the non-powered mic setting. I selected high quality 96 kHz 24-bit recording. And let me know what you feel the differences are between this section and the rest of the video recorded using my Zoom F2. So at 24 Celsius, the Mark II did throw up an overheating warning after about 40 minutes. Like the battery warning, it comes on long before there's any danger of the camera actually stopping. After I set the temperature to high to do my on-camera recordings, the warnings stopped. Now, Panasonic has been pruning features. The Mark II doesn't do in-camera panorama, and if you like the post-focus features, they're also left behind. And I'm hoping that the sample images, in a variety of situations included, provide a good overview of the quality of the Mark II. Most of the images I included were processed from camera raw files. I say that because I found that with auto settings, the Mark II tended to underexpose and use a slightly high white balance. Both are easily adjusted in Lightroom or another photo editor. Adding between 1 or 2 stops did not appear to affect the image quality. Now, the basics for stills and video meet a high standard, and the extra features can get you images you'd otherwise give up on. For travel, it's a nice light camera, using a wrist strap around my neck or in a holster. 8,000 images later, I'm pleased with both how the camera works and the results. Please share your civil comments and relevant questions. I do read and reply to all. Thanks to Paul for his patience. Thanks to you for watching. Stay safe.